Here in the Hyundai Texans radio studio, visiting with General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, back from the bye. How's it going?
Good morning, fellas. Good to be here.
All right, before we go anywhere, Jack Easterby no longer with the organization, and in Cal McNair's statement, there was talk about duties moving forward around football operations. What light can you shed on that for us?
Yeah, tough day for a lot of people in the organization. Jack had a lot of impact on a lot of people. Did a lot of good things for the organization in the period that he was here. So certainly it's important to acknowledge that and respect that. We'll look at things just from a football operation perspective and allocate the responsibilities accordingly. There'll be some heavy lifting that we'll kind of have to redistribute, but, we'll do the best we can moving forward and just try to make sure that we're doing things that are required week to week to make sure that we're prepared both on the field and then behind the scenes kind of logistically.
Nick, during the bye, I know there's always talk about self-scout and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that got done as you went through and self-scouted. And did you have an opportunity to see games, go watch players? How did you spend the bye week?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Did some housekeeping on kind of our team. I think it's important always to kind of take inventory of your team, where you are, whether it's players, individual players, whether there's things schematically that you're doing well, where there's some areas that you might be able to improve. You really want to focus on your team as much as possible. And really, more than anything, maybe kind of getting a jump on the preparation relative to the next opponent. So, obviously, we're spending a lot of time on Vegas and be able to work on them a little bit and kind of get ahead on Tennessee as well. They were actually in the bye as well, so there's no game for them to play. Philadelphia kind of following the Tennessee game on the short week. So I think more than anything, trying to stay ahead on some of the preparation relative to the next opponents. And then the information from a college standpoint is very fluid, and that continues. And just trying to stay as up to date as possible on that.
On a Sunday, we talked about this because sometimes on a Sunday we don't really know what to do. Like, what do we do? Like
Of a bye week.
Of a bye week.
During a game week.
Yeah, during a game week, we got that figured out. But on a bye week, so we talk about watching Red Zone. Do you watch Red Zone? Do you ever watch it?
I don't have Red Zone, so I wouldn't be able to.
Have you ever seen it?
I've seen it just in passing when you're going up in the press box and seeing the different games. But honestly, we have it playing throughout the building as well, where teams games kind of rotate there a little bit. But I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I don't have Red Zone package. So, I get more out of watching just the actual film. And once the tape comes in, then you can really focus on some of the things and make your comments on the opposing players.
I can totally see that not being your thing. Like the focus, I could totally see that because it's just from bounce.
It's great for the fans. It's a tool, really. It's a great tool for the fans that want to kind of stay up on the various teams, kind of their team, see what's going on around the league. And I think sometimes it's a little too much. So try to focus on one thing, and it's a little bit easier that way.
Following a bye, what's your thought? What does the data say, whatever data there is, on rust versus rest coming off a weekend off? It's got to be beneficial overall, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, anytime the players have a chance to recover, it's going to be beneficial. And you don't get really many opportunities during the course of the year because you're kind of going through a normal course of the week, play a game on Sunday, and then you go through Monday through Saturday, and then you can play the game, and then you kind of transition. So it's an opportunity for the players to kind of decompress there a little bit. And I think once we came in the building yesterday, got on the practice field a little bit, and most importantly, just got them moving a little bit and off today. And then we'll kind of transition back to a normal Wednesday, Thursday, Friday preparation, travel on Saturday, and get ready to play the game on Sunday. So anytime you have an opportunity to kind of take the foot off the gas there a little bit, it's beneficial as long as you use it wisely. But you still want to stay, from a player standpoint, you want to stay active. Like, you don't want to do nothing. You want to stay active, but there's just not as much physical demands as normally are placed on you on a normal weekend.
Nick, facing the Raiders, and I want to dive into the Raiders, but you got a couple of really close friends that are running the organization right now, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. Because you've been in the league as long as you have, it feels like everybody knows everybody in some sense. So it feels like your acquaintances maybe with a lot of people, but these are two guys that you know very, very well. What's that like, not only playing them, but preparing to play them, knowing the things you know about them and what they know about you over the years? How does that kind of play into a week like this against the Raiders?
Yeah, it's talked about a lot because you look around the league and there's a lot of relationships that are developed, a lot of people in the building with each other, and then they kind of leave and they kind of spread their wings and go elsewhere. So just have a lot of personal respect and professional respect for both Dave and Josh. Our relationship, both individuals goes back a long way, 1995, 96, when we were together at John Carroll, and there's some other folks in the building had the opportunity to work together with in New England as well. Jerry Shaplinski is a close friend of mine. Patrick Graham is on the defensive staff. So there's a lot of people that have familiarity, but ultimately it's going to come down to the player's ability to execute on the field. So understanding what they're doing schematically in all three phases and being able to take that information and impart it to the players, ultimately that's going to supersede anything else. But I mean, really a lot of respect and appreciation for, both of them, what they've done over the course of their career, our working relationship. And really the relationship goes a lot deeper than just kind of surface level football. So certainly wishing them well. I think they're putting together a good team and a good program. I think they're going to have an opportunity to be very successful here moving forward. You're going to face opposition each week, and they just so happen to be on the other side. So, I'm sure our relationship will continue beyond, the one game and the interaction.
But how difficult is it, if it's difficult at all, to block those things out while the game is in progress? Does all of that sort of melt away and it's just about the players on the field?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you'll exchange your pleasantries either before or after the game, and then what goes on the field, really it's going to come down to the execution of what your players do. So do we do better in those situations than their team? And in the end, that's what's going to be the biggest difference in the game.
So let's dive into the Raiders. Derek Carr, quarterback. Devontae Adams at wide receiver. I mean, the names are known throughout the league. But Max Crosby is arguably the best edge rusher right now in the league. I mean, he's been phenomenal. And on the other side is a guy that's been doing it for a long time, who Chandler Jones. Thoughts about the Raiders? What do you see from the Raiders?
Yeah, really a lot of high-end talent. This is a very talented team. They made a lot of key acquisitions in the offseason, whether it was trades and whether it was extending some of their players internally. I mean, I think they spent, over $300 million or some ridiculous amount of money and made significant commitments to some really good players. So present a lot of challenges. Offensively, Josh is a very game plan specific coach, and you'll see them in 11 personnel, you'll see them in 21 personnel, you'll see them in jumbo personnel. So whatever they have to do, I think Jacobs is kind of underneath the surface, quietly one of the better backs in the league, and I think you saw that on display in a Kansas City game. I mean, they were, he ran the ball 25, 30 times, whatever it was, and they couldn't tackle him. So there's an example actually going back, when you look at him as a player coming out, didn't have as many opportunities relative to some of the other backs they had on campus, but when he played, you could see his skill level and his actual production. He was as productive in the passing game as he was as a runner. So multi-purpose back that's got good lower body strength, good lower center of gravity, breaks a lot of tackles. He's hard to tackle, and he's a good athlete in space. So, and they do a good job in the running game. Yak's been a nice addition to them, giving them some flexibility and versatility in terms of the fullback spot. So good backs, good stable of backs, really good quarterback. Derek's been as consistent a quarterback and as durable a quarterback as any in the league. And Devontae has been one of the best receivers in the league for, a number of years now. And, extended Waller in the offseason, where Waller's an interesting study as well. So here's a guy, 6th-round draft pick, played in kind of a triple option, wishbone offense at Georgia Tech. So you didn't see a lot of production. He gets drafted by Baltimore in the 6th round as a receiver, and then eventually kind of transitions to tight end. I'd say similar to Crosby, he's kind of dealt with some things on a personal level, has been able to persevere, and a credit to him. And, he presents a lot of problems because he's big, he's fast, and he's a huge target for the quarterback moving across the field, so he presents some matchup issues. So Renfro's good inside the formation. Moreau's probably a good complementary tight end to Waller, and they've kind of had some moving parts on the offensive line. So present some challenges offensively, and like we talked about last week, Crosby's a menace whatever phase he plays. Yep. So it's on defense, punt block, field goal rush, and then Chandler's been as productive an edge player in the league as there's been for a number of years. And then Diablo is a guy, kind of underrated, made the transition from safety to off-the-ball linebacker, leads the team in tackles, long, athletic, rangy. They have good players in the secondary. I know they put Hobbs on IR yesterday, kind of played with a broken hand or whatever it was. So, and they play a lot of nickel defense. So kind of in the defensively with Patrick, and very scheme-specific, game plan-specific. So they're kind of mirrors of each other offensively and defensively in terms of how they want to approach a game. And the kicking game presents some challenges as well. So this is a good football team. I know what their record is, but it's a really good football team, a lot of good players. So, we're going to certainly have our work cut out for us come Sunday.
Crosby, new baby, right? We could be looking at sleep deprivation. All right, so there's that.
I don't think that's going to matter with him.
That guy. Yeah. That guy's incredible.
We'll keep our eye out. Nick, going to Vegas, I still have to get my mind around an NFL team in Vegas. It's not like going to Green Bay or something. So is there anything unique logistically you can share with us about traveling to play an NFL game in Vegas? Because I imagine the organization, the Raiders themselves, have had to deal with a lot of that.
Yeah, I've only been to Vegas one time, so I'm not really the expert on Vegas. So I think kind of where the stadium is situated is kind of, downtown a little bit, and their facility is kind of, 10, 15 minutes away. So I think each city presents its own logistical challenges. So, some teams have their facility in the stadium, other teams are kind of off campus. So, really in the end, every team and situation has to adapt to whatever the circumstances are. So I'm not really the Vegas expert. I know it's a team when you go back and look at their history. There's been a lot of things that have happened organizationally, from starting a franchise in Oakland and then going to Los Angeles and then going back to Oakland and then transition into Vegas. You really look at the key figures through the history of the franchise. It's really Mr. Davis, really made his mark. John Madden, Tom Flores, John Gruden. I'd say those are some of the key, when you look at the arc of their history, and now kind of this latest rendition, transitioning to Vegas, and then with Josh and Dave coming in, so kind of a new era, if you will. So a lot of history. One of the most reputable organizations in the history of the league. There's certainly a lot of challenges in front of us.
It's our 4th regular season game against them since 2014. We have played in 4 different locations, which is wild. Houston, Mexico City, Oakland, and now Las Vegas, which is interesting. Nick, you said something earlier I want to go back to, if you don't mind. You're talking about Patrick Graham. You're talking about the defense and kind of a game plan defense. The difficulty, I would think, in facing a team that is that way is trying to figure out, okay, how do they think we're going to attack such that we got to figure out how they're going to attack us? How difficult is that to sort of prepare for, to make that kind of educated guess of what they're going to do against you?
That's the $1 million question each week. That's what you're really trying to do. So you have to look at what you're doing offensively, how you think a team might play you on the opposing side within their scheme. I think, they have probably some scheme flexibility in terms of how they play. I wouldn't necessarily pigeonhole them as a 30 team or a 40 team. Right. They're really a nickel defensive team with 2 good edge players. And then really it's about the front distribution, the front structure. So what are the things that you do that they're going to try to take away? So you have to be able to combat that offensively. So that's kind of the chess match going back and forth. I think the way that they have used Abram is indicative of that. So he's a safety, but he plays down near the line of scrimmage, so they play a lot of nickel defense. So it's really about distribution of people and spots more than here's their front, here's their base defense, or whatever that entails. Right. So just having an understanding of what they're trying to do on the other side of the ball, what are some of the things that you do offensively, how are they going to try to combat that, to your point, John? Really, that's what it comes down to each week.
Nick, watching Red Zone, we were talking about that earlier, and all the other NFL games this weekend, it gives me an extra bit of appreciation for Texans special teams. So can you discuss that for us, how Frank Ross and his bunch are doing? Because I notice every time we kick off to the 1 or inside the 5, it feels like you're stopping the opponent inside the 20, sometimes inside the 15, getting that result a lot. And not that you're seeking that all the time. Sometimes you kick it deep, but that's just one of the aspects.
Yeah, you're really trying to figure out any area where you could create an advantage for your football team. So whether it's offensively, whether it's defensively, whether it's in the kicking game. So, Frank and Sean do a really good job. We allocate a lot of time, a lot of resources to that, I would say, group in that area. We're fortunate to have some pretty good players in that area, from MJ to Blake to Dare, who've made an impact, JRM. So the kicking game's important, and your commitment to that phase is reflective in how you approach and handle it. So in the end, each phase is going to probably help you win a game one week to the other. You never really know when that's going to be. And I think as long as everybody understands the philosophy behind it, why we're doing it, and then each week if we have to make an adjustment or modification, going back a few weeks ago, able to execute the fake punt, or whether it's situational punting there at the end of the Jacksonville game where, we're midfield, punt the ball down there, kind of kick it out of bounds, keep it out of Agnew's hands. So we've talked about this previously. Any ways you can maybe find some hidden yards that create some field position advantage or give your team an advantage, we're going to look for those. So, I think the key is whatever you think you're doing well, try to maintain that level of performance week to week so that it's good one week and then the next week it's not as good. You want to maintain some level of consistency overall. So you'll be pretty fortunate in that area. And again, Sean and Frank, do a really good job in that phase.
Nick, I know there's a lot of luck that goes into keeping guys healthy. But how much has the continuity on the offensive line paid off? The fact that starting in week 2 when Scotty stepped in at Denver, you've had that same offensive line for the last 4 games, as opposed to last year we had, and of course COVID plays a factor, I get all that, but you've had continuity for the last 4 games. How has you seen that manifest itself in the offensive line play?
Yeah, that's always probably the one group. If you can have sort of the same 5 guys on the field, I mean, it helps everybody. They can work together. I think there's so much communication that goes on, literally each snap in the span of 2 to 3 seconds. So from the mic identification and then getting that information from the center to the guard to the tackle, and the tackle to the tight end if there's pass protection involved. So the more you have a sense for that person next to you and the more you've worked with that individual, you would think it's going to be beneficial to everybody involved. So, since JB's been out and Scott has stepped in, like you alluded to, and that group has kind of been together, and, fortunately, they've been able to stay on the field. I'm sure at some point that's going to change. So, anytime you have consistency and continuity, it helps. I mean, look at our situation, and you look at, honestly, kind of what the Vegas has had to go through. They've had a lot of, I would say, moving parts in the offensive line, a lot of people in and out. Looks like they're starting to settle on one specific group here, moving forward. So, that's the one group, though. Those 5 guys work together on every play, and the more they're together, you would think it's going to be more beneficial to everybody involved.
Nick, a lot of traveling Texans are going to the game in Las Vegas. Is there anything to do there other than the game itself that you're aware of? Just asking.
Just make sure you don't lose all your money all at once. Just remember, the casinos were built on people that go out there and spend money in the casinos. So let's not lose sight of that. So all those nice hotels, the Bellagio, I mean, there's a reason they look as nice as they are.
I got a feeling that your one trip to Vegas was different than my one trip to Vegas. I got a feeling. I don't know. I
was much younger, I guess.
We're going to have an unplugged version of this show later. All right, Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.